continent's priorities ranging from sustainable development and youth empowerment to peacekeeping and economic reform. To help us unpack what this transition could mean for the global stage and for Africa, we are joined by Bora Kamwanya, the Vice President of the Pan-African Youth Union, for an in-depth analysis. Sir, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, to start us off, could you briefly explain the role and influence of the Secretary General of the United Nations in today's global context?
Of course. So the SG of the United Nations is both diplomat and a moral voice for the international community. While the role doesn't really carry direct political power of the states, it holds significant influence through mediation, agenda setting, and the ability to actually mobilize global attention. In today's fragmented world, the SG often acts as a builder between competing powers, and we sometimes hear about the United and Russia, and also a guardian of international norms. So they're often the one who can bring adversary to the table, call out injustices, and also remind the world of its collective responsibility. And I think we have seen in the current SG, Antonio Guterres.
Now, what would you say are the key challenges, global challenges, that the next Secretary General will need to prioritize?
Well, they will face convergence of crises, of course, escalating conflicts, climate change, widening of inequalities, and of course, the declining of trust in multilateral institutions, seen recently with the United States and Argentina. From Ukraine to the Congo, from climate emergencies to global distress, this challenge will be, will be to respond to simultaneous emergence crisis while also rebuilding long-term international cooperation. This is a question that came often during the interactive dialogue that you made with the candidates. They will not have the luxury to just choose one because everything is at the moment. And all of these are interconnected as well. So the challenge will be restoring trust in multilateralism at a time when countries are increasingly turning inward.
Indeed, as you rightfully said, they will not have the luxury of choosing a particular focus area with so much geopolitical tension that we are witnessing globally. Now, how important is leadership style and diplomacy in shaping the effectiveness of a UN Secretary General?
Well, it's actually absolutely critical. So the effectiveness of SG depends less on formal authority, more on persuasion. Credibility and trust, they are the top diplomat. The SG is a leader who can engage with major powers, also maintaining independence, and that's very hard when you have 5 members who are very strong. The SG can listen and as much as they can speak, but also can significantly amplify the UN's impact. So it's everything, but the job is also getting egos, political power, and every real tension between. So they will need to be firm but diplomatic, principled but pragmatic. And if you don't have credibility with both major power and state, you simply cannot be effective.
Mr. Kamwanya, there have been growing calls for more representation from the global south. How realistic is it that the next Secretary General could come from Africa?
Well, I believe the calls for representation are mostly for UN bodies such as the United Nations Security Council. During the interactive dialogue, one candidate actually mentioned the issue faced by United Nations staffs and their prospect of career investment. If my memory serves me right, out of the 10 United Nations Security Generals have existed, 5 were from Europe, 2 from Africa, 2 from Asia, and 1 from South America. There is a rule that there should be a regional rotation. And in fact, after Ban Ki-moon from South Korea, supposed to be a candidate from Southern America. This time we have 4 candidates, 3 from Southern America and 1 from Africa. To respond directly, what I is it is very unlikely that the next XG will come from Africa. Add that the candidate that we have right now, Senegal former president, His Excellency Sall, does not have the support of his own country, Senegal, and of the Union, which is a bigger challenge. There's also the gender aspect, because I believe that, and many believe that the world is ready for the next woman SG.
Definitely the gender aspect, and if we do end up seeing a female Secretary General, definitely that would be the first. Now, what unique views or priorities might an African candidate bring to the role, should the focus shift in that area?
Well, of course, and this is actually very important for us on an African candidate will likely bring a perspective that is grounded in lived experience, development challenges, peace building, and resilience. Issues like equitable climate justice, post-conflict reconstructions will be approached with a strong emphasis on fairness and local ownership. And candidate Macky Sall, former president of Senegal, has had hands-on experience on the wheat shortage that we experienced at the beginning of the Russian war in Ukraine, and he would, for example, be more keen to protecting developing nations from. So an African candidate will likely also bring a deep understanding of how global decisions actually play out on the ground, which is something that is sometimes missing in internship.
Mr. Kamwanya, youth development and inclusion are increasingly part of global discussions. How can the next Secretary General better integrate youth voices, particularly from Africa, into global decision making?
So in terms of actions, a lot has been done by the and his team, but a lot remains to be done still. The XSG should move beyond symbolic inclusion and create a structured mechanism for youth participation, especially our region, where population is overwhelmingly young. This could include stronger support for youth-led initiative at the global level. And at any point, you could ask any African that's attend a UN meeting, they will tell you, I'm not sure whether I will have a visa, right? I mean, there's meaningful participation of African youth. So the UNSG, the next one, should definitely intervene. But more broadly, financing for youth organization to remain fully independent and oriented towards sustainable development. So we've talked about youth inclusion for years. Now, new SG needs to be real, which means that if young people are seated at the table and not just a voice in a room. And I'd say that Africa is the youngest population. This is perhaps the time to see an Undersecretary of Youth from Africa.
Now, in terms of global governance reform, including institutions like the Security Council, what expectations are there for the next Secretary General?
Well, I think there are high expectations for the next Secretary General to advocate for this reform, especially on the Security Council, as you mentioned. While they cannot impose change, they can build momentum. They can facilitate dialogue, and also they can keep the reform on the international agenda. So all candidates that they will work on the reform of the UN and its body in a way or another. In practice, it's more challenging than that. The right solution needs to be found. In 1945, for example, it was easy to pick 5 permanent members because they had won the war and they could impose their will. Now it's more complicated. If we take power as a metric, countries like Germany, Japan, India, Brazil, and Nigeria should be represented. But what metric will be taking to decide who's there and who does not? So that's going to be one of the questions. I understand there's a lot of frustration with the current system. So the next SG will not be formed it alone, and they will be expected to push the conversation forward on representation and fairness.
Finally, what qualities or track record should the world be looking for when evaluating candidates of this critical role?
Well, I think for us on the continent, we remember 2 candidates we've had, Boutros Ghali from Egypt and Kofi Annan from Ghana. As a person from DRC, I also remember Dagama Shoulder, who died unfortunately trying to save Congo from the post-independence. So the ideal candidate should combine, of course, diplomatic experience, charisma, morality, and a proven ability to manage complex situations. They should have a global, but also they have to be grounded in understanding the local realities. Above all that, the world needs the SG who can inspire trust, navigate geopolitical tension, defend the core value of the UN. And out of the 10 who have served UNSG, as I was mentioning earlier, only one was not a career diplomat. All of them were head of state, head of government, minister of foreign affairs. Only Kofi Annan had spent 35 years in the UN system. It's more than an administrative role, it's a political one. And the SG has to be independent and ready to lead in a very divided world.
Mr. Kamwanya, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
That was Bora Kamwanya speaking to us. He is the Vice President of the Pan-African Youth Union, and he was just really digging deep and giving an in-depth analysis for the priority areas for the next United Nations chief. As we know, Antonio Guterres, the current Secretary General for the United Nations, his term comes to an end at the end of this year. And there are 4 candidates that are in the running, 2 females, 2 males. Are we going to expect another African candidate? He says highly unlikely, but we will see as the process unfolds. You are watching Good Morning Namibia, and we'll be back.
Welcome back. Now, the National Youth Day and Youth Week is commemorated annually in accordance with Section 45 of the National Youth Council Act number 3 of 2009, which designates 27 April as National Youth Day and the final week of April as National Youth Week. These observances provide an important national platform to celebrate, empower, and mobilize young people as key drivers of Namibia's development agenda. Joining us with more on the activities lined up for the National Youth Sensitization Week is the Acting Director of the National Youth Council of Namibia, Sirikang Tila, as well as Lydia Simon, who is a Commerce Regional Coordinator for the National Youth Council. Ladies, good morning, and thank you so much for making time to speak to us.
Thank you so much, and good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Madam Intila, perhaps let me start with you talking about why it is important to dedicate specifically a date and a week to young people who are with regards to development of this country.
Yes, firstly, I must highlight that the National Youth Day, National Youth Week, has its roots in the resolution of UN General Assembly 5420 of 1999, which dictates that we should dedicate a day at which occasion young people and the nations can highlight the importance of their activities, what issues they are facing, and it's on this basis that Namibia has also adopted a day, as indicated at the beginning, that we celebrate, we observe what the young people are doing at national level.
At national level.
Yes.
Lydia Simon, being a